And now we come at the trigonometry. So first it asks us to state the quadrant where we would find 215 degrees. So one thing that may be helpful for you is actually kind of draw the coordinate plane just like this. And we're dealing with degrees, so we'll do 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and then 360. And this asks for 215, which is in this area because it's between 180 and 270. And that is quadrant 3. Remember, it's quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. So since 215 is between 180 degrees and 270 degrees, that means it is in quadrant 3. Question 19 is very similar, but it is dealing with radians. And we're dealing with negatives. So radians will do 0, and since we're going negative, we'll come around this way. This would be negative pi over 2, or negative 1/2 pi. This will be negative 1 pi, negative 3/2 pi, and then negative 2 pi. If it's helpful, think about this as a fraction. Another way you could write negative pi over 4 is negative 1/4 pi. Okay, now negative 1/4, just like you can think about this as negative 1/2 pi. So it may be helpful to just think about the fractions. Negative 1/4 would fall between 0 and negative 1/2. So that means it's in this quadrant because it's between 0 and negative 1/2. So again, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it is in quadrant 4. Okay, list at least one positive and one negative coterminal angle for 510 degrees. To find coterminal angles, you can add 360 or subtract 360. So for 510, we can add 360, and that gives us one of the coterminal angles. Sorry, my computer's running a little slow here. I think 870 is what that one will give you. Now you can also subtract 360 from 510. Now if you notice, that gives us actually just another positive coterminal angle. That's fine. You can use either one of those as the positive coterminal, but to get the negative one, we're going to have to subtract 360 again. You can actually add and subtract 360 as many times as you want to get coterminal angles. So for the positive one, you can use either 870 or 150. Both are fine. And then for the negative one, negative 210 degrees. 21, we're told to convert the angle measure from degrees to radians. So we have 330 degrees, and we're asked to convert it to radians. To do that, we multiply by pi over 180. One thing I said in class was you always take the one that you want. We want radians and put it on top. Pi is in radians. I never really write the unit, but that is pi radians. So the one you want to get goes on top. So we get 330 pi over 180, and we can reduce the 330 over 180 part. So let's just type in 330 over 180 and change that to a fraction. So we get 11 over 6, or 11 pi over 6. Now we're doing the reverse direction. We're starting with radians and converting to degrees. So since we want degrees, we'll multiply by 180 over pi. The pi's do cancel out, so we just get negative 3/4 times 180. And that gives us negative 135 degrees. Make sure to include the negative there. Okay, now it tells us to use the triangle picture to find the values of these three trig functions. Okay, first thing we might notice is that we are missing this side right here. To find that side, since it's a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'll just call that side A, doesn't really matter. A squared plus 8 squared equals 13 squared. And it is important to put this one as the one by itself because it is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always the one that goes by itself in the Pythagorean theorem. So we'll solve that. A squared equals plus 64 equals 169. Then we'll subtract 64 from both sides, get 105, take the square root, and get the square root of 105. You can put the decimal, but I'd prefer you just leave it as the square root of 105. Okay, now, given we're looking at this angle, we can label each of these sides. This is the opposite side, this is the adjacent side, and this is the hypotenuse. So when we're looking for sine, we know sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Remember, some old horse caught another horse taking oats away, or some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. Next, use the picture at the right to find the value of y. Well, we're going to use trig here, meaning sine, cosine, or tangent. We have this angle, and this is the adjacent side, and this is the hypotenuse. So given that we know the adjacent side and are trying to find the hypotenuse, cosine makes the most sense because the cosine of 58 degrees is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So we'll multiply both sides by y, and then divide both sides by the cosine of 58 degrees. And we can type that in our calculators. We get 61 over cosine of 58 degrees. Okay, I think I'm in the wrong mode. So let's go to the mode. Should be in degree mode. Let's try that again. There we go, 115.11. So y is equal to 115.11. Okay, 25, similar problem. Find the value of a. We have this angle, and this side is the opposite. This side is the adjacent. Opposite and adjacent deal with tangent, so we do the tangent of 70 degrees is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. So we'll multiply both sides by 13. We'll find a by doing 13 times the tangent of 70. And we get 35.717. Okay, same type problem here. We've got an angle. We know this is the opposite, and this is the hypotenuse. So we'll use sine. We use sine of 31 degrees is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Multiply both sides by 8.2. Then let our calculators do that hard part. And we get 4.223. Okay, now we've got to figure out all the parts of this triangle. Well, we can go ahead and see angle E is 90 degrees. That's what that box means, as I'm sure you know. So we can go and put 90 degrees there. They tell us that side F is 5 and side D is 11. So we can figure out the third side, side E, by using the Pythagorean theorem. We can do 5 squared plus 11 squared equals E squared. And we do it that way because we know E is the hypotenuse. So we solve that. 25 plus 121 equals E squared. So we get 146 equals E squared. Take the square root. Okay, so we now know E is the square root of 146. And we have all the sides, so we can start solving for the angles. It doesn't really matter. You can solve for D or F next. You can choose. I'm going to pick D. It's best to use this side and this side because we know them exactly. This is the opposite. This is the adjacent. So we can use tangent to help figure this out. So we do tangent of angle D is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And we can use arctangent or inverse tangent to solve this. So we'll do arctangent of 11 over 5. And we get 65.56. Well, now we know two of the three angles because we know this one and the 90-degree one. So the quickest way to figure out the third is just do 180 minus those two. And we get 24.44. So we have used trig and the Pythagorean theorem to figure out all the sides of this triangle.